Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show's been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my recently drafted Sanity Toolkit. It's something that's helped me through a personally tough time, and I think there's value for each and every one of us. It's kind of human fundamentals, and I hope it will help you in these turbulent times to maintain that vital optimism and creativity. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Ben Talon. This is The Creative Condition. I'm the founder of The Creative Condition, the host of The Creative Condition podcast, creativity coach, illustrator and writer, and I come here every week, sometimes twice a week, to help you to embolden yourself creatively, to flesh out, to enhance that creativity in these times of automation. We need to do it with humanity. We need to do it organically. We need to do it with some soul, some story, and some sympathy to the world at large. So I hope that resonates with you. And if that is the case, then you are on the right show. Welcome back. If you're a regular listener, I appreciate you being here as always. I love you all. It means the world. If you're new to the show, welcome. How did you find me? Get in touch, ben@bentalon.com. Always delighted to hear from listeners if there's something that resonates with you, something you like in particular. It makes my day when I hear from listeners and something has landed with them. Big thank you, as mentioned at the start of the show, to the founding sponsor of the show who made it possible in the first place and have helped to maintain it ever since, Illustration X. Wonderful global roster of illustrators, animators and artists of all kinds, and you can check out not only their roster, but the news, what's going on, the work they're doing for the industry, and other ways you can connect with them at illustrationx.com. I'd also like to thank fellow sponsor Paradiso Institute, doing incredible work trying to embolden creative leaders. Their rallying cry is there is not enough bold, brave creativity, and they want to support people to get there. In our industry, there's a sea of same rising at the moment with everyone having the tools. These guys want points of view, they want bold voices, and they want to help support the people who are doing that through coaching, books, programs, festivals, and many other things. Check them out at paradisoinstitute.org. And last but not least, the Ukrainian Institute. I shout out every show because I think they're incredibly inspiring, supporting the brilliant, bold, brave Ukrainian creative community during this horrific time of war. You can support them at ui.org.ua by sharing some work, by appreciating what they're up to, or even commissioning someone, supporting them in another way. Go and have a look at the beautiful work there and make up your mind yourself. So how have you been? I hope you're well. This is something of a candid episode. I wanted to be quite personal in this one, and it's ironic that you find me on yet another 0 hours of sleep morning. So if I'm a bit rambly today, forgive me. I've mentioned to you on previous shows I've been having this now for about a year and a half. This one is off the back of a 3-week good spell. Been feeling so much better, been sleeping well, so I suppose I shouldn't kick myself in too harshly. I am quite frustrated this morning. It was very unnecessary. I started to overthink getting to sleep while reading last night. And because my brain is still quite accustomed to a lot of anxiety, I think it tapped back into that neural pathway and just sent me off a kind of adrenaline cliff right before I was about to go to sleep. And I just got into that horrible cycle of panicking about not sleeping and not sleeping causing the not sleeping. You know the one. Well, maybe you don't. If you don't, maybe you're quite fortunate. But it's something that's been going on for a little while now, and I have been getting better at it as I work on myself. I've got this journal in front of me. It's pen and paper. It's old school ruled notebook. It's the way I like to operate. I'm very, I'm not anti-AI, but I'm very skeptical and very dubious about its environmental credentials. For that reason, I've very much held off, other than a very small spread of chat GPT searches when it's been something that's felt quite important and worthwhile. It's just my stance on it. But also, I'm just that kind of guy. I'm very analog. I like pen and paper. I like to keep off screens as much as I can because, well, they're a contributing factor in all this lack of sleep and this stress that I've been feeling over the last year and a half. Well, longer, 3 years or so for the anxiety side of things. But this is a list that came about through personal journaling. I do it every morning. I do it at the breakfast table. Sometimes the kids ask me what I'm worrying about and I'll tell them. I'll be quite candid. But I'll also give them the upside and, what I think is the solution to that worry. And just to help them, I'm starting to just very quietly, subtly give them the tools that it's taken me until my early 40s to start to piece together in a very shambolic way. I've had to go through hardship for that, personal stress. And I don't want them to do that. They're going to have hardship in their life. That's the way of the world. They're exposed to far too much information. They're just going to be, inevitably. Whether we, protect them from that in the house or not, there's going to be people out there, their peers, their schoolmates, that are not on board with all that. So they're going to be exposed to stuff. So I want them to have the tools when they encounter these feelings of, lack of self-worth or stress about events in the world. They're very smart kids. They're very emotionally attuned, and I think that is good and bad. And the bad side of that is very troubling, as I've found out. And it really impacts on creativity. I'm not just using this platform as a way to vent or anything. It's utterly critical that we are mentally well as much as we can be. And when we're not able to manage that, if we are able to take charge of our creativity. So this is a kind of 15-point list that has come about, and it's probably going to keep growing. But this is something that I now turn to when I'm feeling a little low or a little anxious or a little trouble with a particular thing. And I found over the last couple of weeks that there is something on there that immediately helps. So I wanted to share it with you and make of it what you will. It's probably a little disjointed. The order is not very curated, so I will probably be leaping back and forth as I come across further points. But let's get into it. Let's not ramble any further. By the way, before I forget, if you want to work with me on a coaching front, whether it's story coaching to help you tell your story through a book or for a talk, or just for my internal process, which is to work with you to reframe and write your story on a personal level as a compass for your creativity moving forward. So we dig out your values, we reframe things that you might have had down there as flaws or failures, and we look at how we help you to step into that story moving forward to become the author of the life you want to live. Something I've been working with the Paradiso Institute on through their coaching training recently. Hopefully going to be launching a group offer for that in the not too distant future. But if you want to work with me, get in touch, bentalon.com. We can have a little 20-minute Zoom call. Hear your situation and tell you a little bit about what I do. If it doesn't feel good, we go our separate ways. If it's too expensive, we go our separate ways. But I hope that it's not the case and it will help you to elevate your creativity. And by having that call, we will get a sense of each other and we will be able to make a decision about moving forward. I love doing this stuff. It's something I feel like I was born to do. It's a part of this list, which I will get into. But without further ado, let's get into it. So point 1 on the list is acknowledge influence. It's that idea of circle of influence. Can we affect the thing that is weighing on our shoulders? If the answer is yes, then let's find a way to do it. Let's attune with who we are and what we do, with our creativity. If it's not, how do we let that go? Because it's very troubling, isn't it? The things out there, the wars, the climate crisis, what's AI doing to our world and everything else. There's a lot going on, the divisive media and politics. You can't escape it. I can't go on a device and go on the internet in some capacity without being blindsided, whether it's a well-meaning advert from a benevolent organisation that uses a troubling image or reminds me of a certain crisis in the world that just, tips me into some sort of spiralling, or whether it's social media or an email or about a petition. Again, troubling issues. I get this all the time. I've had to get off some of them to unsubscribe because there's only so much that I can handle on a day in terms of mental input and what that does to me as a very sensitive person. So acknowledging influence, and I should preface this list by saying, to revert back to Tina Rapp's episode 299 last week, Tina talks about embodying this stuff and not just theorizing. So I would say that all of the things on this list have to be felt in some way. So what does that look like for you? It's a very personal journey to work out how much of this is relevant to you, but also how you do this your way within your life, your busy life, and within your work, for example, ways that can help you. You have to embody it to feel it, and that's how this list has come about. These are all things that at first I saw as theory and sort of felt, oh wow, yeah, no, I really get that. That makes a lot of sense. Brilliant, that helps. And I get an initial upsurge in feeling before then forgetting it when the next wobble comes along. And the reason I forget it is because I haven't embodied each of the things on this list, but I have now, and I've felt the change that it can make. So I know what I have to do to get back there, and it's not always easy. It's actually very hard a lot of the time. It takes a lot of, kind of meditation and inner strength to override the feelings of overwhelm and high anxiety that come when we get trapped and the stress response system is activated. I've been reading Maisie Hill's Powerful, which is a great book that encapsulates a lot of all that stuff about the stress response system. Big recommend on that one, hoping to have Maisie on the show before too long. So acknowledging influence, can you make a change? If not, then you have to let that go. You have to get back to finding your ability to be defiantly optimistic and creative and accept that there is bad shit happening in the world, but it maybe isn't something you can directly influence. And learn to surrender, which is number 2 on this list. Surrender to life's plans, because there is something bigger than us. Now, I'm not a religious person, so I'm not speaking in those terms. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Everyone has to find their way through this life, and staying sane can often mean that, people's faith and people's religion can be really, really vital to them. So I'm certainly not knocking that. But from my point of view, surrendering to life's plans is looking around me and just seeing the cycle of life and death and nature and all of that expansive time that was happening before I was born, at least in this life as Ben Talon. And going, there's something comforting in that, in just surrendering and going, I can't change everything. I can't be everything to everyone, and nor should I try. There's great catharsis in surrendering and just acknowledging that there's something going on that's bigger than us, and we have to sort of lean into that and feel when we're attuned with it, and then give ourselves to that. That's where the energy and the effort comes in, especially with things like creativity. Number 3 on the list is to shine. Now, this is my personal one. It may resonate with some of you, it may not land with others, but I have found great purpose in my life in helping others to shine. Creatively, personally, as human beings, just making that little quip, when there's an opportunity to make somebody laugh, smiling at that person in the street when I could otherwise be on my phone walking past them, spending that little bit of extra time to let the kid pat my dog, little things like that helps a person to shine, and who knows what they go on to do in their day, in their week, in their month, in their year, in their life. And that may have played a tiny part in just creating a little happiness bridge or an optimistic bridge, to the next thing. So that's become a great cause of mine. I've recognised that there's something about the way I just behave naturally, the way I always have since I've been consciously aware, that does seem to enable people to share things with me, to want to share personal things with me, or things that are troubling them, or just their hopes and something that's making them feel optimistic. And I love that. I love to bounce it back, and it gives me great sense of purpose in my personality. And now shining is my term that I kind of landed on that seems to work for that. Point 4 on the list, impermanence. Now, getting very Buddhist, that's a school of thought that I've gone quite heavily into through this time of trouble and anxiety, the kind of Buddhist sensibility with impermanence and surrendering and allowing things to play out, because it's that idea that everything in this moment is kind of perfect in the way it needs to be. That might be good or bad. There might be struggle, there might be strife, there might be future-facing worries, there might be backwards-facing regrets. But ultimately, to acknowledge that we are impermanent, that we're not going to be here one day, and everything around us is also impermanent, brings something of a comfort to me to kind of come back to this present moment and see just how precious it is, whether it's the opportunity to draw for a living today, or write a story, or work on something that's semi-interesting at the very least. Usually it's something that I love, that I'm very passionate about. That's a great feeling. And I think impermanence helps us to recognise that even if we are in a bit of a shitstorm and we're feeling terrible in this moment, I'm feeling pretty glum this morning after my 0 night's sleep. I'm feeling a degree of self-loathing, of frustration, of why have I reverted back to this after so much progress over the last 3 weeks. But then going, Well, in a few days' time, hopefully I won't even be worrying about this. I'll be looking back thinking, what was that about? Why did I allow myself to get so worked up? So again, impermanence in our worries, but also in our happy moments, knowing that they will pass and there will be a struggle around the corner, and how are we going to meet that struggle? Are we going to shine through it? Are we going to acknowledge our influence of it? Are we going to surrender to life's plans? Point 5, presence and acceptance of the present moment. Now, this has been incredibly powerful for me. To be very open and honest, I went through a period around Christmas time. It reached a fever pitch where I was worrying all the time about my own mortality, about the mortality of my loved ones, and it was having a great impact on my creativity. It was awful, to be quite honest with you. It was there all the time. I was in this horrible thought loop of, oh, that's wonderful, that moment's beautiful, but shit, we're not going to be here one day. And this became a very pressing anxiety, something that was present all of the time. So a way through that, a way that I've been managing that much better, and it hasn't really been a big concern unless I'm utterly exhausted. I tend to find that this troubles me when I've got limited brain power to defend from it. But a way to manage that is to truly truly anchor myself in that present moment. Now, this takes work, it takes meditation, it takes will and application to do this on a regular basis, but I'm getting better now at just enjoying the moment and going, well, it was always impermanent. To the best of my knowledge, there was all of that other impermanent stuff before Ben Talon existed, and I like to think that on some molecular level I was a part of something else. I don't know. I don't really want to roam into the ground of reincarnation and all that stuff on this podcast, because that's something I'm still working out, which will be raised in a point on this list a bit later, which is spirituality. We'll get there. Still working out my beliefs and all that. But again, when I look at the life and death cycle, autumn into winter into spring and all that stuff, there's something about just accepting this present moment, my impermanence, and going, well, whatever's happening, this is real right now to the best of my knowledge, and it's truly beautiful, and it's making me feel something awesome. So let's feel that. Let's really give myself to that. And I'm getting better. I haven't been getting those horrific racing heart thoughts of, oh shit, one day I'm not going to be here. It gets a bit dark in that regard, and that was troubling me for a while. And when I was open and honest about that, a lot of people came back going, oh my God, I'm so glad to hear that you go through this too. I had it around my 40th. I had it, I have it at the moment. I had it 10 years ago, and I've learned to put that down. So something about that. And then leaping forward into number 6, defiant optimism. Now, to refer you back to the episode with Tyler Schlossberg, I can't remember the number of the episode, but if you just search Creative Condition Tyler Schlossberg on your preferred podcast network, you will find it. And we talk about that. We open the episode with Tyler, an artist based in New York. She's incredibly talented. I met her in Mexico at Paradiso, the inaugural festival last year. And she was just no small talk, straight into the deep stuff. One of those kind of artist brains that I love to bounce off and to spend time with. And she talks about that, about this idea of defiant optimism, how it's almost rebellious in our current moment to be optimistic, to fight something with love and to move forward. And I think that creativity in particular really does hinge on that. You cannot enter the same intensity of flow or creative, empowerment without that defiant optimism. I think if we're truly pessimistic and feeling a bit scarred and fearful by the world, which, my word, I have certainly been that, and it's so hard not to be that. But if you can find your way into defiant optimism, it opens up a new door, a new level of making and creating that is very inspiring, and it has something incredibly powerful about it. And I've put, there's a little side note here, defiant optimism to the very death. Even if all those worries, I've been fretting about, there's a kind of right-wing, very divisive political party that's on the rise here in the UK called Reform, and it scares me, what world are my kids going to be growing up in? All of that stuff, again, along with the mortality worries. I've been right there in the midst of this midlife crisis, really allowing myself to get these sleepless nights, and that's been one of the concerns. But actually, again, you have to meet that with defiant optimism, and you have to keep creating. Look at the Ukrainian people that I shout about on every episode through the brilliant Ukrainian Institute. They're still they're creating, they're publishing books on design and art and all that stuff, and it's incredibly beautiful that they're doing that. So I just want to refer you to that and show that we can do that. We can be defiantly optimistic to the very death if we accept the present moment, to go back to another point. What I find is all of these things feed the next thing. And within this menu of sanity, because Lord knows we need it, there's always something that just brings that little gut feeling of a nice sort of rise of feeling. Point 7, gratitude, past, current and possible. What do you have? Can you just spend a moment, close your eyes, kick back? Because there's a tool called the Grateful Flow that Phil Stutz talks about in his movie Stutz, which is awesome on Netflix. Big recommend, made by Jonah Hill. And it's an idea of closing your eyes, truly entering 5 things that you are grateful for in a way that they bring you a lovely feeling. By the time you've done 5, it tends to take over whatever negative spiral that you were in. Maybe you need 10, maybe you're in a deep spiral. But ultimately, if you can practice that true gratitude, and when I've been making these lists and working in my journal, it's taken me some mornings from a point of feeling stressed when you wake up with that cortisol in your gut, because this is a biological thing. It's a protective self-defense mechanism. It's something we evolved to do, to wake and to go, am I safe? Now, if there are things in your mind that have been kicking around, whether it's something you've seen on social media or something that you habitually worry about, that cortisol is shot around your body to warn you that there's something here on this radar somewhere that my subconscious is working through that is to be alarmed about. And what you do is you go and plug the worries into that. That's what I've done for the longest time without understanding how that works. But sometimes you can feel that and acknowledge the feeling, but go, thanks for the warning shot today, but there's really nothing to worry about, and I know that. And I'm just going to go to these gratitude tools, get my grateful flow on, and able to counter this feeling. Now, I've gone from letting that cortisol and that adrenaline take over my entire day with a stress spiral, to now sometimes be able to work out of it in half an hour by sitting here and journaling and going through my things that I'm grateful for and just closing my eyes. And I ask the kids what they're grateful for too. I'm just starting to plant those seeds of getting them to think in terms of be thankful for what you have, because they're getting a pretty good life as it stands. Where we live in Salisbury, which is relatively safe, lovely community here, green spaces. And from an early age, they've said to me, Dad, we're lucky, aren't we, to have these green spaces on our doorstep? Because we've always said that to them. And I say, yeah, you are. You're incredibly lucky. And you have no kind of grounding, nothing to compare this against, because you haven't grown up with too much hardship. But there will be that in their lives, because there is for all of us. It's part of the human condition. Again, to go back to Phil Stutz, pain, uncertainty, constant work are the 3 immovables in our life. So how do you defend against that? And gratitude is one of them. So you can think about memories and things that have happened in the past that give you a delightful, warm feeling, because then that gets into connection. You can think about the things right now, the roof over your head, the bed that you might sleep in, the career that you have or you have a shot at, or a career that you've had has taken a bruise, but you have a chance of getting back to it. So can you bring some gratitude into that and conjure a wonderful feeling of progress? And then the possible, grateful over what might be in front of you, what might be around the corner. I remember when I started illustrating just how incredibly exciting it felt, even though I was skint and always worrying about where the next commission came from. There was an equal level of excitement about, oh my God, I've had a few phone calls, I've had a few commissions. I know now that can happen at any time, and I know it's done over email predominantly now, but back then I would get a lot more phone calls, and I would get them from landlines in London. So when I saw 020 as a prefix, which is London, I would go, oh my God, call from a London number, and answer it. And if it went, hi, is that Ben? Yeah, he's such and such, art director from X. And I would go, oh my God, I would have to choke my words out. I'll be like, hi, yep, how are you? Good, yep, I'm available. Oh. I would fall apart, But the gratitude for what might be, even today, sitting here in this week, I know it's possible that I get a commission. That'll get a new connection with someone who's also into creativity. Maybe one of you guys who's listening will reach out and we'll have a lovely email exchange. I don't know. That happens. Anyway, you get the idea. Number 8. Okay, big one. Spirituality. Hear me out here. I have done therapy for the first time in my life. Recently, I booked 6 sessions with a local guy who's been incredible. Been really beautiful conversations. I will return there at some point, but after this first block of 6, I feel like I've got to a point where I now need to consolidate on the work and keep kicking forward, because this has to be sustainable and viable for me to continue. But in those sessions, he asked me if spirituality could be a useful tool, because some of the major worries that we would always come back to in the therapy sessions was eco-anxiety. Terrified, get hot weather, shit my pants. Heavy rain, oh my God, it's here. The climate crisis is right in my face. Now it is. It's hard to ignore that anymore. But as he said to me, look, chimp brain, this is a conversation he told me I should be having. Yes, we're going to die one day, but it's probably not going to be today. Now, what can you do to work towards this cause? Because we all have a battle in our life. We all have a big, gloomy threat. Think of the Cold War and the people who had to worry about nuclear and all that stuff. People who live in war-torn countries who have conflict on their doorsteps every day. Now, it's no different, and the climate crisis might just be the single biggest mortality threat we've ever faced as a species, and it's utterly terrifying and disheartening. But it's also something very spiritual about going, okay, impermanence. Let's look back on the list, impermanence. And doesn't it make it even more important that I have to shine now, today? I have to pull my head out of my ass, stop moping around the street, stop moping in front of my kids, illuminate them, do something that makes them feel joy and connect with the world. Took my daughter out the other Saturday, and I wasn't feeling amazing in the morning. Sometimes Saturday morning can be a bit challenging because I've had a busy work week, and then it's a change of pace into being dad, and I adore that role. It's what I look forward to the most every week, and I never thought I'd say that as someone who loves their job and is passionate about creativity, but I do. And I was a little challenged Saturday morning, but Martha, my daughter, and I went out into town because she didn't have a dance lesson that week for half term. And we sat down with sketchbooks in town and we sketched together for the first time on location. And she was a natural. Her drawings were so much better than mine as kids I want to be. I'm going to get into that for the next episode 300 with Austin Kleon. He's got a beautiful book called Don't Call It Art, which is very much about that. And it was magic. My sketching was terrible. I did one that was semi-alright, but I don't often draw on location these days, so I took a bit of warming up. Now, I helped Martha with not being precious. I said, look, people in your life will tell you that accuracy, polished, will equate to good quality, but it's not the case, and I'm going to help you defend against that. So just sketch like this, and I did a loose drawing, and she's done it ever since with her pencil work and her pen, and it's just beautiful. And that was a real bonding moment, and I helped her to shine in that moment. And there was many lessons. It was gratitude. I was, talking to her about living in a very aesthetically beautiful city like Salisbury and having these wonderful things to get to draw, these interesting buildings and rooftops and people and traditions. So all of this for me weaves into this question that came from the therapist saying, does spirituality have a place here? And I said, yes, it does. And I speak of spirituality in not a religious way, but in as much as almost Buddhist, in that impermanence idea again, that cycle of life and death and nature. And when it comes to creativity, impermanence is a beautiful tool to not be precious and to let that pen fly, let that ink splatter, let that tool, whatever it is that you use, lead the way and follow an idea. Oh, I love it. And there is something quite spiritual about that for me. So that's how we kind of signed off, and I've been exploring it ever since and just looking at my place in something bigger than me, and to go back, looking at the ability to surrender to life's plans and know when I don't have any influence in a certain way. And to find that defiant optimism, because that is almost spiritual in its way, isn't it? To find your cause, to pick a fight. I picked the fight of creativity some time ago, fighting for creativity in our societies, to be elevated, to help people, to shine, to tap into theirs, to find their story so they can be the author of the lives they want to live. That's what I do with my coaching, and I adore it. And it's work that's incredibly fulfilling to me. Now, to me, that feeling of fulfillment and purpose and belonging is very spiritual. So that's my take on it. To show up, to do the work, and to trust that good feeling I get from doing the work means something. I can't ever have any proof with that, but I guess that is veering into sort of faith and spirituality. Number 9, curiosity. Tina Rapp on the episode last week, 299, go back and listen, talked about transforming fear into curiosity. Now, that's another powerful tool. So curiosity is huge, isn't it? What is the story here? What is the meaning of all of this turmoil and this turbulence, and what is our part in that fight? That brings great kind of belonging too. Staying curious. I ask all of my coaching clients, what is making you curious? What is making you hungry? What are you reading? Where are you going that's of interest? What in the world makes you interested and exploring further? Is it themes? Do you do book clubs and get into fiction and find inspiration that way? Are you curious about other cultures? Are you curious about your inner self? There's so much there that energizes us in curiosity. And if you can shift that mindset from one of fear, like Tina was saying, into a curious one, that's profound as well. Now, again, just to go back to my first point on this, it takes practice, it takes hard work. I've been doing this work now for about 8 months, maybe it's even a year. And it's not easy because I'm often doing it when I'm feeling shit or I'm feeling challenged or vulnerable or, in the midst of what I now look back on and realise was what really was an anxiety disorder. I was such negative thought patterns all of the time. Every time I saw a bird, my brain would revert to the climate crisis, a worm, the climate crisis, and not been able to be in the moment and see the beauty of that moment, that life there, sharing this life with me. That's where I'm at now. But back then, I would just look at it and imagine the soil drying out, or fires in the forest, or trees falling, and what's the habitat for that bird. Very dark stuff, but that's where I was for too long, and I still go back to occasionally. But this list helps me to emerge from that, and curiosity is a big part of it. Number 10, play. We must always play. We don't always get the chance to play as much as we would like in our jobs, so we have to self-initiate. We have to make our own creative work. We have to find other ways to play. Is it going to the theatre? Is it going to the cinema? I took myself to watch Backrooms, insane horror film, brilliant, like reinventing a lot of things in the genre, at the cinema the other week. I went down to the Odeon. I live near an Everyman, of which I'm a member, but I can't always afford the near 20 quid for a ticket at the Everyman. So I go down to the Odeon because I like the cheap and cheerful, and I like the old multiplexes. And I sat in there, and it was quite busy, and I was glad to see that. And I watched Backrooms, and I felt inspired, and I felt playful. That was a form of play for me, going to indulge in a horror film, which my wife can't handle. That's my little treat, But playing is also wrestling with my son on the carpet. It's picking Martha up and dancing with her and flinging her about the living room because she's a little mover. There are so many ways to play, wrestling the dog for his ball on the carpet or on the field, and I love all of that. But it's also just getting out and going for a walk with my friends. There's so many forms in which we can do it. I have a friend on the local dog walk who's been on this show, Martin Reinhardt, I think was his surname off the top of my head. Forgive me if it's not, but we had an episode about his games design work recently as an art director in gaming. But he plays by, he's got the big microscopic goggles for working on models, and he makes these intensely detailed models and landscapes. And I love that, and that's his escape, that's his play. I think we must always be playing as creatives and as humans, to be quite honest. Number 11, cause. To immerse in your cause. So I said I chose my lane. I chose creativity because I was close to going down to some pretty dark places around 2022 when I first moved to Salisbury, and we got that horrific 40-degree summer in the UK. Now people overseas might scoff and laugh at that, but that was unprecedented. That was a record-breaking temperature here in the UK, and we really felt it because we're not, this country is not designed for that. People died. I think about 4,500 people died that summer, which is tragic. And that was a dark place in my mind. I wasn't sleeping well with the heat, and it just took me to some horrible thought loops, some negative, the neuroplasticity side of it, what's the term for it? The new channel in the brain, anyway, that gets created when we get into these repeated thought loops. Self-defense again. But I was really in a bad place with that, and I had to say, look, Ben, you can't go on every march, you can't go on every protest, you can't sign every petition, you can't be scrolling on what was then Twitter and sharing everything, which I got into a really bad habit of, sharing some really dark and gloomy tweets, which was probably just messing other people up rather than creating a call to arms or action in a positive sense. That's where I try to be a little more now. I try to write about this stuff, make art around this stuff, connect with people. And cause, really, I thought we're going to need vast amounts of creativity to address any significant issue in the world. So is that not a worthy cause? Yes, it is. And haven't you been doing that for the last 10 years? Yes, you have. And much longer, to be honest. Always been passionate about this stuff since the day I walked into art college. And even before that, I've been drawing and helping people to shine in that way. So this is my cause, This is it. Which brings me on to number 12. Creating. I have to create. I have to make the work. And that is, more emotional creativity for me. I think you have to be doing something for you. You have to be doing something that is making you curious, giving you that sense of belonging. And you might never show it to anyone. It might never see light of day, but I think we have to be doing something for us. My wife went under Paperhawk and was making beautiful portraits out of, handcrafted paper sculptures, and still does occasionally. Does them of pets at the moment. But when she went back to working in a proper position, an employment role, when the kids had been born for stability, we had many a conversation about that, about how she'd surrendered her creativity, and not just professionally either. She wasn't getting the chance to do things like the interiors at home. She loves to decorate and do things like that, and she's getting back into that more now, which is beautiful to see because it's very natural. And she's often said, I don't want to make this a career. I could look at ways to do this, but I don't want to because it's very pure to me. I love to spend my weekends doing this, or my evenings, or my breaks, at work and things. So it's beautiful. So what are you creating? I think we all often forget to create when we're caught up in the making of the work for our clients, which of course is creative. And I often get to express my emotional creativity through that because I've been quite obstinate and stubborn and determined in building a portfolio and a brand that would bring me work that I give a shit about. So I enjoy my work. But usually there's just something about creating, for me, something that I don't care if it ever gets seen in the public forum or sells loads of books or whatever it might be. There's just stuff that I have to do that is really important, and I think there is for every one of us as humans, especially as creatives. 13, together. I have a list of people. 2 episodes ago I detailed this exercise called Your Universe, so go back and listen to that episode. I think it was 298. And it's this idea that by looking at the universe of all the people that were in our lives, not just people we know, but contemporaries, that could be people creating at a celebrity level. But I think it's more powerful when it's people who inspire us in our world, who we've had conversations with, who we know who they are, what they stand for, and they're making stuff that is awesome. I think there's something very beautiful about that. So when I feel isolated and alone, which I sometimes do working out my little garden studio 5 days a week often, I will look at my list, my universe, and go, oh my God, yeah, I'm living in this current moment with Charlotte Bradman. I messaged her last week to talk about that. I had her on the podcast not too long ago about her beautiful book. Oh my God, what's it called? The Happy Nomad. Sorry, Charlotte. Lost it for a moment there. Beautiful stuff, but gives me a rush to know I'm creating at the same moment. Hector Ayuso and Marco Fan, the founders of Paradiso Institute, see what they're up to, and it buoys me, the energy of that festival. So who's in your universe? Go back and have a look at that tool, but that togetherness, that community, that connection is utterly vital for us as humans. How are you getting it? If you're not, work on that. It's so amazing to just be able to vent about these troubles that we carry around in this turbulent world. Hugely recommend it. That community could come in many shapes and forms. I have friends who go and play Magic the Gathering at Monday night at the pub. I've been thinking about going back to boxing training, worried that I might mess up my wrist, but if I strap up properly and don't go too crazy, I think it could be a brilliant primal release. Anyway, many things like that. Even my daughter's dance class, talking to the parents there. You're a part of a small society. The school run also counts, but how are you getting yours, and is it enough? This is really important. 14, leadership. You are a leader in this world. We all are. We lead our lives with authenticity, hopefully. And if not, what would that look like for you? Maybe we need to do some story coaching. Forgive the cheap plug there. But it's true. I can help with that. And leadership is really important because are you leading your life? Are you leading your organisation? Or are you in a reactive mode rather than responding with authenticity and creativity and curiosity and all the things we mentioned? So what does that look like for you? And last but not least, this will probably expand over time. Maybe I'll do part 2 if it does. But 15 is story. Living in your story is vitally important. But what story are you telling yourself? Because we often walk around with a disjointed or an unnecessarily negative or self-critical story. And I would like you to be walking around with a story that emboldens and reminds you of the things that you've done, the adversity that you've overcome, the challenges, because we all have. It's easy to compare and go, well, they've had it a lot harder, so mine doesn't really count. But it does, because it's your life and you're the author of it. You're the protagonist. There might be peripheral characters who've had much bigger shitstorms, and they can inspire us. We can help them. But it doesn't matter because it's not our story. In this context, what is your story? What mantra are you telling yourself? What is the deal? Who are you? Who are the people closest to you? Where are you working? What does that story look like? What is the story of the fight in your life? We have, the climate crisis is here. There is economic turbulence. There are wars. That gives us a story. We have to step into and live that story. So how do you make that a positive, energizing, good, creative one? I'm going to wrap it up there, guys, because I've rambled long enough, but I hope that 15-point list might form something of a sanity toolkit in these tough times. Please let me know. Let's have a conversation. Tag me on LinkedIn. We'll have a conversation in the comments. Message me directly on there if you want. Email me ben@bentalon.com. They're the best ways to get me. Anything else, I'll probably miss it on Instagram and take weeks to get back to you. But that's where I tend to get back to people the soonest. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you again for the founding sponsor of the show for making all this possible, as ever, illustrationx.com for their global range of illustrators, animators and artists. Paradiso Institute. shouting for bold, brave creativity and strong leadership in our creative industry at this time, paradiseinstitute.org. And last but very not least, the brave supporter of the bold Ukrainian creative community, Ukrainian Institute, ui.org.ua, doing awesome work. Share it, commission it, whatever you can do to help matters. And as I mentioned, if you want to work one-to-one with me through my coaching, head to thecreativecondition.com/coach. We'll have a conversation about my story coaching. Am I helping you to write your story? Am I book coaching you? Am I writing your story for you? Because I also do that. Did it for Hector Ayuso. I wrote his short story, which was his life story. Incredible process. We spent 12 hours talking together to make that happen, to get to the core of who he is, tell his deepest, darkest, and all of those lovely, beautiful moments, and his love of creativity to make it happen. Currently working with Pablo Honey as more of a book coaching role to help him tell his story. Incredibly exciting. Would love to do that with you. There is also the big flagship pit stop session. That's enough of the plug-in. For all the other resources, which are completely free because I want to cater for all budgets, head to thecreativecondition.com. That's it. Nice one, guys. I love you all. Thank you for listening. If you're new to the show, I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. Come back for more. Episode 300 up next with Austin Kleon. Awesome, guys. Have a great week. Cheers.